Hello and welcome back. So in the last video, we laid the framework for what would be our forest map. This is basically just the base layer, the ground layer. And in this video, we're going to actually be adding in the trees that make this map, a forest. This video is going to take a while. This step is by far the most time consuming. So settle in, relax, grab yourself a beverage or something, and let's get into it. I've got myself pretty much everything I need here, and yeah, this this video will take a while, and a lot of it is going to be fairly repetitive. So I mean, once you've kind of figured out what we're doing, you know, boot up a video game or something, do something on the side, because yeah, this will be a little tedious, but I want to showcase the whole process, so I will get into that. But anyway, let's get started. So at the end of the last episode, we had just finished setting up this map, and we created two layer groups. One we labeled as trees, the other we labeled as one. What we're going to do, we're going to go into our resource folder here, and I already went over what this treesource layer group was. It's basically just a collection of trees from Celiana's Ancient Dungeons tile sets as well as her Parallax tile sets. And basically what I did was I set the canvas size for each of those individual images to be aligned to a 32 by 32 grid, and made the shadows for all of them just 32 pixels high and no higher. That will be important for the next video, but for now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire layer group and we're going to duplicate it. So you can either right click and hit duplicate layer, or you can, for my hotkey, I've got it set to Shift Control D, and that will actually copy the entire thing. We're going to open this up. We're going to open up the tall tree group. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select a random layer from this group and drag it into one, which will make that tree appear. We're going to use our move tool, and we're just going to move this tree into position. And what we're going to do is we are going to, row by row, put trees into place. Starting with the first row, and it's basically going to be aligned with the base of the trunk. And spacing is a little bit important to this, but I'll kind of go over that as we hit certain snags. But yeah, so we're going to start with the tall tree, and then we're going to alternate, and we're going to go short trees. The way that I have these layer groups set up is that I have an even number of tall trees versus short trees. I think I have one more tall than I do short. I think it's like 23 tall trees and 22 short trees, I believe. So we'll open up short trees and grab a new layer and drag it in, put it in place, close the groups, close short trees, grab one from tall tree, drag it in, move it in place, close the group, open up short trees, drag a short tree in, drag it in place, close the group, close short trees, drag in a tall tree, etc., etc. For about 2 hours. This is what you have to look forward to. This is, no joke, the most tedious part of parallax mapping. This is specifically a technique that I use to make forests. It is not a technique I use to make every map, but forests especially are extremely tedious just due to the sheer number of layers that are used. And most of it is just trees. We will literally be doing this for the next 2 hours. I'm not joking. I'm going to try to get the entire forest done today. Next episode, we'll look at doing the overlay. As well as the overlay, we will also look at doing the implementation of this map into the actual game. So we'll be setting up our collision detection, we'll be setting up our events, we'll set up our spawn points. Quite literally, we will do absolutely everything that is left to do in the next episode. But for this one, we're just going to be dragging trees into place. That's it. I'm sorry if you were expecting something more exciting. Unfortunately, this is the harsh reality of parallax mapping, is that oftentimes you will be doing things that are horribly tedious for hours on end. I've already done 4 of these maps prior to starting up this one, and I feel like I've done 10 just because of the sheer number of trees that I've done this whole process with. It's very tedious. It is mind-numbingly tedious. But in my opinion, the result is worth it. When I'm honestly, the majority of this episode, yes, is going to be me dragging trees into place, but it's also just going to be me kind of sharing some of my thoughts about parallax mapping, sharing some of my experience, because I need to fill the time with something, and I'm sure you're more interested in listening to at least something, no matter how relevant it is, rather than just the sound of mouse clicks. So I am going to just kind of share some thoughts while I do this. And who knows, maybe it'll be just kind of like a relaxing thing you can throw on in the background or something. But yeah, when I kind of got started with parallax mapping, I didn't really know what to expect. And the first couple maps that I did actually had some heavily overgrown areas. And when you're using the editor to make forests, all you need to do is click and drag a tile, and suddenly you have hundreds of trees. It's not particularly challenging to make forests in the editor. What is challenging is making realistic, detailed, overgrown forests that are not just blobby pillars of tree. RPG Maker VX especially was quite limited in the forest and tree tiles that you had available to use. I know some of the newer engines like MV and MZ have better tile sets for forests, and there's tons of stuff available online that's totally free, and you can use it for both commercial and non-commercial games, and the most they'll usually ask you for is just credit. Sometimes they'll ask for a commercial license, but not always. I think Max tiles, or first seed material, as it's sometimes known, is I believe that is both free and royalty free, so you can use it for both commercial games and non-commercial without needing a license for them. But he does ask for credit, and those tiles are gorgeous. I used a lot of fursuit material in Bloodstained Hands, and I think I use a little bit of it in this game, but I think for the most part I'm using Celiana's tiles in this game. I don't have a commercial license. Also, quick side note, so we finished one layer group here of all the trees. I duplicated the tree source layer again, and we're basically going to do this process again. I'm going to take the one layer group though, and I'm going to drag it into the tree layer group, and then close that group. And now I'm going to create a new group and call it 2. And this process will repeat for the rest of the map. Take the duplicated layer, drag them in one at a time, position them, and then drag the new one in, create a new one, labeling them sequentially and numerically. That will be the whole process for this map. Anyway, I used quite a bit of first seed material when making Bloodstained Hands, but when I started work on Thrall, I wanted to create the most consistent mapping style that I could, which meant that I ended up using a lot of Celianos tiles and hardly any first seed material. I actually don't think I'm using anything from Max tile sets. I might be wrong about that. I'll have to double check, but um, yeah, for the most part, it is just Celianos tiles. And for once, I wanted to. Fortunately, I'm in a little bit of a better position financially now than I was when I started Bloodstained Hands. I'm working a better job now, and I have a little bit more disposable income. And I decided, you know what, I'm actually going to invest some money into this project, and so I bought the Ancient Dungeons packs, which actually are arguably not even that expensive. They're actually very reasonably priced for the amount of work that went into creating those tiles. Um, but I will say that I'm thrilled with the result. These tile sets are gorgeous and are well worth the money. And if you're making your own game and you want to go commercial, I would strongly recommend uh, either going with custom graphics or something that is higher quality that maybe you have to pay a little bit of money for. Um, because the idea is that if you're going commercial, hopefully you'll make enough um, on the back end that you'll recoup whatever investment you made into the game. Because that's just it. It is an investment. It's not a, um, in my opinion, whatever you spend on your game, you should expect to get a return of about equal amount. You might not, and unfortunately, that is the reality of commercial game dev, is that oftentimes you won't actually get a return on your investment. Um, but I'm not going to use this tree. I will explain why in a second after I finish the thought that I was just on there. Um, I choose not to make any of my games commercial, and that's just my choice. You don't have to do the same. You can do whatever you want with your games. I'm not going to move that one over actually a little bit. Um, I personally choose to make all of my games free. Um, no matter how much work I put into it. I put 15 years of work into Bloodstained Hands. I made it free. Part of that was because I didn't have commercial licenses for a lot of the things that I was using, resources, scripts, things like that. And part of it was I honestly didn't want the hassle of going commercial and then having all the responsibility that comes with that. Because it is not a thing where you can just make a game, sell it, and then say, "Oh, I made a game and it's commercial." There's things you have to do. Like you have to make sure that you have developer support. You've got to do bug fixes and updates and patches if your players actually do find something. Because if you're not willing to do that as a commercial game dev, you're kind of creating a bad name for yourself in a way. Again, this is all my opinion. You don't have to agree with this, and that's okay. If you don't agree, that's totally fine. I'm not upset. Um, but in my opinion, if I was going to go commercial, this is my perspective of if I was going to become a commercial game dev, I'd want to make sure that I have the level of support for my players that would be expected of someone who's actually selling their game. And so I didn't really want that responsibility. I make games for a hobby. It's not something that is a side income for me. It's just a hobby. And I didn't want that responsibility with a hobby. I didn't want to turn my passion into a job. Sometimes that works. Sometimes people do that, and it turns out really, really well for them. And honestly, if you can do that, if you can take your passion and turn it into your job and be successful at it and not lose the passion, fantastic. Good for you. I'm happy for you because we need more people like that. But I didn't want that. I tried turning a passion into a job once, and it did not work out. I'm a martial artist. I've been training in martial arts for over 15 years. I once in my life taught martial arts for about a year at a school. Um, and what I found during that time, during that year, was I was starting to lose the passion for it. Because I would go into a school where I'd maybe have 4 students showing up for my class on a Saturday afternoon when it's raining and I'm driving down the highway on a moped because I wasn't even driving at the time, really, not a car, but just a moped. And I knew that of those 4 students, maybe one would show up, and I still had to go because I needed a paycheck. I needed the money. It wasn't about teaching for the love of teaching. It was about teaching because this was my job. I needed to make money. And that to me kind of soured the experience. I got offered to essentially run that entire school. The guy I was working for, I'm not gonna. He was a great guy, honestly. He was an awesome guy and a fantastic instructor, but he wasn't doing what his boss was telling him to do, and so he essentially left that school. And I was offered the position of head of that school, and I could have taken over that school and essentially ran an entire martial arts studio on my own. And from the experience that I'd had throughout that year, I said no to that because I was losing the passion for what I'd loved to do over those last 15 years. It was becoming frustrating, and I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose what I'd worked so hard for. Um, so that's kind of been my experience with turning a passion into a career. It did not work for me. That's not to say it won't work for you. If game dev is your passion and you want to try to make it into a career and you want to go commercial, go for it. Absolutely go for it. Um, but don't expect it to be easy. And, expect to do things that you don't want to do, but you have to because it is now your job. And another thing I would maybe do is look down the road. Look at the people who have been doing what you want to do for 5, 10, maybe even 15 or 20 years longer than you, and ask yourself if you want the results that they have. Do you want the life they have? Do you want the, financial situation that they have? Do they get to see their family and their kids as much as you would want to? Do they have debt? And if they do you want that? And, is that something you're prepared to take on? Uh, and, look at people who've gone before you. And I would recommend this for any career path. But look at people who've gone before you and ask yourself, do I want to follow that path? And if you do, awesome, do it. Absolutely do it. See if you can find somebody who's already doing it who will help you, follow in their footsteps. And if, that's not what you want, maybe reevaluate. Maybe it should just stay a passion for you. Maybe it shouldn't be a career. You don't necessarily have to do what you love for a living. I certainly don't. I work in a warehouse, and it's not a comfortable position by any means, but it's what I know. And you know what? It provides a living that allows me to do the things that I love to do on the side of that and get some fulfillment from that and even a little bit of significance. I'm able to keep up with my martial arts training without turning it into a career and grow in my leadership there and impact people in a way. I honestly, there's nothing more rewarding than teaching a kid how to have a self-image and some confidence. And the best way I can do that is through teaching martial arts. And I'm happy that I can do that because of the job that I have that I don't like, but pays me the bills, like pays me enough of an income that I'm able to do the things that I love to do. So I mean, don't necessarily feel like you have to do what you love for a living. Do what works so that you can do what you love. That's always been my advice. Anyway, I went off on a huge tangent there. That wasn't in any way relevant, but I'm gonna just kind of take a quick break here and go over what I've been doing here. So we're already 3 layers and this is fantastic. Actually, we're making really good progress. This might go faster than I thought. Talking while doing this is actually making me work more efficiently. So what have we been doing? The exact same steps. We're dragging tall trees and short trees into a layer group and arranging them on the map. But what we're doing is we're positioning them in such a way where the base trunks are creating sort of like a border and an outline where you can it basically is player that's where your collision detection is going to be. So the player can't walk onto that trunk, obviously. Like this is basically the wall of our dungeon. And so we've had to position certain trees in specific ways, like this one here, for example. By placing it in this exact tile, it blocks passage through here where there's normally a gap between these two trees. So by positioning these trees on the edge of these clearings, basically everywhere where the tall grass was growing, but not the short grass, on the edge of the clearings, that's where we're setting up the wall of our dungeon. And we're going row by row, which kind of gives us a little bit of flexibility because see this tree here? Well, we can place another tree right next to it, or we can place one kind of off the side here, or we can place it off the side here. And with that, we can actually determine the size of our clearing. I'm probably going to place the next tree that's in this row right about here. And I'm actually going to go into something fairly soon here, in about another row or two, over when it becomes important to choose tall trees over short trees. I'm also doing one thing in particular. You may have seen me do this already. You see this little pine tree. I do not like putting this tree on the edge of a clearing. And there's a reason for that. When I go to create the overlay, you would technically be able to walk on this tile and this tile, but not this tile because that's where the trunk is. But to take this tile here and this tile here and create it as part of the overlay would include the shadow. And unfortunately, the script that I'm using copies the overlay twice. I have not yet figured out how to fix that. I'm going to work on that, but what it essentially does is it makes the shadow on those two tiles twice as dark as the shadow here, and you get a hard edge. So to avoid that, I try to place this tree deeper into the woods where it's not going to have it's not going to be on the edge of the clearing, and I won't have to include these two tiles in the overlay, which means that I can include them in the base layer and avoid that issue altogether. That's a little bit technical, and I may be able to explain that a little bit better in the next video when we actually go over creating an overlay. But I just kind of wanted to touch base on where we're at and what we're doing here. So essentially, the placement of our trees actually does essentially determine the wall of our dungeon and the outline and the border. So we do have to be a little bit careful about how we place them as we get into the clearings. So right here, this is going to be the edge of that clearing. I'm probably not going to place another tree anywhere in this row up until here. Yeah, so that anyway, let's keep going with that. So that was a short tree. We're going to bring it to top. Oh, hold on a sec. I think the last one I brought in was a tall tree. This was going to be there, and then I switched the places of them. So next is short tree. Anyway, I went off on a huge tangent that is not in any way related to the map that we're creating here. But essentially, yeah. My point being that I tried making a passion into a career. It didn't work out for me. That's not to say it won't for you. If game dev is your passion and you want to make it your career, go for it. You know, make sure that you know what you're doing and you know you've thought the decision through. But and be aware that you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do. But you know what? If it's what you want to do and you have the skills and you have the knowledge, go for it. But I will say, and this was kind of where this tangent sprung from, was if you're going to go commercial, do it right. Make sure you're producing quality. I use paid for tile sets because I want to go for quality in every game that I make, even if it isn't commercial. Um, that's not to say you can't go commercial with runtime package resources or free resources, but I feel like you're shortchanging yourself there. And all I mean by that is I feel like you could do better. You know, it's if you have the skills it takes to go commercial, you're worth more than that. Okay, I am going to place one short tree right here, and the reason it's going to be a short tree and not a tall tree, I'll show you. If I place a tall tree right here, look how much of that path that blocks. It almost looks impassable. Like you can't even really see the path. So I'm going to take that tall tree out of there. I'm going to put a short tree there, and I'm going to try to find one that's not going to block this path too much and make it still very clear that the player can go there. So I'm just going to look carefully. That could work. I'm going to find one that maybe doesn't have any leaves, because that's probably the best way to not block the path. There we go. Perfect. Just like that. You can still clearly see the path and be able to go through it, like see that that's very clearly traversable. But you know, we have some collision there, so that's good. Now let's go back over to this side. I just realized I'm going to move that down so that's in the right spot. There we go. Now, do we want a tree right on the edge of the cliff face? Maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, let's just do it. It might look a little weird, but honestly, that tree might even be hidden by like the ones that are down here kind of thing. But let's just go for it, just to make our collision easier to figure out. Anyway, well, now you've learned more about my life than I typically was planning on sharing on this channel. But yeah, I am once again going to bring in a short tree, but that means I'm going to have to plant 2 tall trees pretty soon here. And I might even do one more. No, I'm going to move that over there. That's good. Will I do one more? Maybe. Maybe not. Let's do one more. Okay, so now I need to plant 3 tall trees. No, we're actually just going to do the 2. We'll put that back there. So I need to plant 2 tall trees, although I will place one over here. There we go. And then in that same row, 3 tall trees in a row. So 1, 2, 1 more, 3. There we go. Perfect. Okay, and then back to the short trees. And we'll just keep up with our pattern. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't really know where to go from there. That's maybe a little heavy, and just a little disclaimer here for whatever it's worth. You don't have to agree with me. If you don't like what I just said about all that, that's okay. You know, like I'm not here to offend anybody or anything like that. I'm just here to make maps and games, and show you what I learned throughout that process. Part of which includes, you know, some of the things that I've learned include, the mentality of a game developer and the mindset of a game developer. It's not, yeah, it's not. I don't really know how to finish that sentence, so I won't. Yeah, so I won't. All right, so we're now at the base of the cliff. This is looking pretty good here. We're actually making pretty good progress. I'm a little surprised. I expected this to go a lot slower. Usually when I'm working on my own, at my own pace, I overthink everything. 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 I overthink everything. Everything. And it takes so long. But yeah, we might actually have this done before 2 hours. We shall see. take a sip of a beverage. A little break. Here we go. Okay, back into it. Did I plant it? Yes, I did. Did I? No. Yes. Yes. No. Yes. I don't know. I can't remember. We'll find out. There we go. Yeah. Now we've got a nice 2-tile wide path there. And I mean, you may be looking at this like this big tree here kind of hides almost all of the trees that are behind it, which may make you think, is it really necessary to plant all these trees? Probably not. Probably not. But I am a little bit of a perfectionist, in case you haven't noticed. Um, I like to. I'm highly attuned to the small details. I am that person. I'm sorry that will nitpick the tiny, tiny details of level design or map design. So if you're a game dev of a game that I have played and maybe even reviewed, and I nitpick your game design, I am so sorry. It's probably nothing to. I just realized we skipped a step. I don't think I created a second layer group, so no, I definitely didn't. So we'll just do that now. I'm not paying much attention to what I'm doing. It's okay. It doesn't really matter. Um, it just it's gonna be a little bit more work for us in one group and then less work in another. It's fine. It doesn't make a difference really. It's just to keep things organized. That's all those are for. But yes, if I nitpick your game design, I'm sorry. It's not actually probably anything to do with you. You've probably got a fantastic game, and I'm just a little bit OCD about some things that maybe aren't really that important, honestly. I don't necessarily want to call anybody out, so I'm not going to say any names or name any projects. But there was one project that I played, a game that I played about a year ago, that had received phenomenal reviews, and I thought this has got to be something special because everything I'm reading about it is like this is the greatest game you could ever play, made with this engine. Um, you know, everything I could have ever asked for in an RPG, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, okay, this looks like it would be worth playing, so let's give this a try. And I was honestly disappointed. Not because the game was bad; it was actually really good. The story, very well told. The mechanics, actually fairly well thought out. Um, the only real snags that I felt the game had were that the battles felt a little bit slow, which honestly wasn't even the fault of the developer because the uh, system he was using was not one that he had made, but was rather a script that was provided by another developer, which, since he wasn't a scripter himself, fairly left him kind of fairly limited as to what he could do with it to customize it. So it wasn't even really his fault. Um, and then there were some graphical issues and some mapping issues, particularly with one particular town. There was some collision detection issues where you could just straight up walk on the roofs of houses. And I I judged the game very harshly because of that. It was probably unfairly so. Like the game actually is very good, and I actually did enjoy it, and I still enjoy it, honestly. But because I have that attention to detail, that eye for detail, I tend to pick things apart in a way that's not necessarily constructive. Um, and the thing is, I'm very much in the minority when it comes to determining the quality of that particular game because just about everybody else in the community thinks it's pure gold. And you know what? Maybe it is, and I'm just not the right person to be judging it. Um, yeah, I definitely try to pay attention to the tiny details, um, which can also sometimes be my downfall because it means that my production times are a lot longer. I spend a lot of time developing games instead of actually a lot of time releasing games, for whatever that's worth. I mean, just as an example, I don't think I've ever actually participated in a game jam. If you've ever participated in a game jam, I would love to hear your thoughts about what that was like for you in like the comments below or whatever, because I have yet to participate in one. I actually posed a question to the community not too long ago of what have been your experiences with participating in game jams? Because anytime I've seen an event or a game jam come up, I've always thought of participating, but I never actually engaged. Or I maybe started a project and then never saw it through to completion. And anytime I talk to somebody who's done game jams or anything, they say, do it. Absolutely do it. It's an incredible learning experience. You learn so much from doing it because of a number of reasons. One of which is that you are forced into a time crunch. You have to create a certain quality of product within a deadline, which as a hobbyist game dev, you don't typically have to do. Um, in a AAA game dev industry, yeah, you're dealing with that stuff all the time. But as a hobbyist, that's not something you're going to be dealing with very often. So it's good experience for both if you want to go commercial and just if you want to, stop procrastinating. If you want to reduce the level of procrastination you have when it comes to developing your games, participate in a game jam because you will figure out how to work under a deadline. Or so I've been told. I I can't say for sure because I've never done it. Um, I forget where I was going with that. How did I get on that train of thought? Game jams and things of that nature. Um, what was I talking about? uh, oh yes, I get so bogged down with the minutia and the small details. Oh no, I'm not going to do this again. Drag layer 4 into the tree group. Create a new layer group called layer 5. You know what? Let's actually just take a minute to look at what we've got so far. This is actually looking pretty good. This is essentially a forest. This isn't. This is still empty, but this top half is. Um, and yeah, there is a distinct border around the map that is determined by where the trees are placed. I went with short trees at the edges of the clearings so that it wouldn't block too much of the clearing. Um, But that's really all we've done. Everything else has just been working around the clearings and the paths. So this is turning out actually really well. And again, we're doing really well for time. This is going faster than I thought. Um, anyway, back to what I was saying. Yes, I get very bogged down with trying to perfect the small details that arguably maybe only like 1%, not even 10%, 1% of players will ever actually notice or pay attention to. And because of that, I spend a lot of time working on my game. Games. I don't want to say game anymore. I used to say working on my game when the only game I ever worked on was Bloodstained Hands, but I have multiple games now and a new game that I myself am currently working on, so I shouldn't say game, but games. I spend a lot of time developing my games, and the truth is probably about 60 to 70% of the work I actually do on my games is not going to be noticed by the player because it's such a small detail that the only way that you would even notice it is if you were the one who either made it or you are hyper analytical like me. So, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in the sense that I end up typically with a very high quality product by the end of it. But it's also a curse because it takes a long time for that product to be completed. Little break. What about you? I'm curious actually as to the people who watch these videos. What kind of a game developer are you? You know, do you overanalyze all the small details and hyper focus on things that most people won't even notice, or do you just kind of make things based on what your passion is and what you find fun, and you know, maybe don't get distracted too much by the small stuff? Um, God, that would probably be much more peaceful if that's you. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if I should name this video planting trees or um, detailing the dungeon or talks with Strack, because that seems to be what we're doing. We're just talking. We're not really going into too many details about how to create a parallax map. This is mostly just us having a conversation, a rather one-sided conversation, because you can't exactly chime in. I mean, you could comment, and I might respond. I'll probably respond. I don't have a ton of views, so it's not like I have like thousands of people to respond to. So, but oh gosh, let me take a look for a second here. I should actually maybe go into a little bit more detail about what I'm doing and how I'm making some of the decisions as to where to place trees, but it's not that complicated. Obviously, don't plant it in the middle of a cliff edge, you know, don't plant a tree in a pond. Preferably don't plant it on the path or in the middle of a clearing. You know, place your trees in a way that makes sense. I like to put at least one tile distance between the trees, but then I usually like to place a tree staggered with it in the next row down so that it adds that solid border. I'm pretty sure the way that these trees are placed, that's actually a solid border. Yes, it is. And that is the edge of a clearing, which means I'm not going to place this tree anywhere there. I'm actually going to move it right over to the edge here. And I'll place it there, and then the next one I'll stagger down there. Yeah. See, here's the thing. When I stop um, thinking out loud, I guess, because I'm not really conversing with anyone. I'm talking to myself in my kitchen. I'm not really talking to a person. I'm talking to you, the listener, but for all I know, you're not even listening. So really, I'm just kind of talking to myself here, but I hope somebody's listening. I hope you guys are listening. Um, but it's kind of funny when I stop talking, I get hyper focused on the details of where should I place this next tree? How far should the spacing be? Does it need to be closer? Does it need to be further away? Do I need to stagger this better? Is it in the middle of a clearing? Do I need to move it? Whereas if I just kind of keep voicing my thoughts and just keep doing what I'm doing here, I don't really think about it as much. I don't overthink it, and I just kind of place the trees, and away we go. And we're already about halfway done. I'll zoom out in a second here just to actually see where we're at. Almost halfway, not bad. And keep in mind, we're going to be placing less trees next to this little cliff face here, but more in the bottom half because there's no pond. So we could also probably space the trees out a little bit more to reduce the number of trees that we have to place. We'll see about that. But yeah. So in case you're wondering, this is essentially what I do almost every day. I try to do one full map every day, which takes a lot of time, which means I don't always get to it every day. Some days I've got too much going on and I don't really have time to get to it. Um, you know, some days I can only lay the foundation, the groundwork. Other days I just plant, 5 rows of trees. I don't even get to, half the map. Other days I do a full map and then I get started on the next one, you know. Um, and other days I don't work on maps at all and I actually work on mechanics. There's been a lot of times where it's like I'll watch my brother play test the game and he comes across a bug or uh, he mentions like, man, it would be really cool if the game could do this because I'm wishing I could do that, but there's no feature or option to do that. And then I think, oh, that would be a great idea, and I go and implement something without working on maps at all. And then I spend a day or two just coding, scripting, and or coming up with event systems or reworking the database or whatever it is. And I don't always map every single day, but unfortunately, because of the mapping style that I'm going for with this game, which is what we're doing right now, and the sheer number of maps that I have to do for this game, there's a lot. There's a ton. It's probably too much. I might need to tone it down a bit. But because of the sheer amount of maps and the um, style of mapping that I'm going for, this one I'm going to put way over here, which means I'm actually going to put it in the next layer group. But because of the style of mapping that I'm going for and the sheer number of maps, I have created for myself more work than I probably should have. And honestly, I've planned to have this project done by the end of um, 2025, and I might not even hit that target. Um, and the only reason I won't is because I won't say I won't, but the only reason I might not is because I underestimated how much time it would take to create all these maps. I will quite literally be spending more time creating maps than I will any other aspect of this game, probably combined. I'll probably spend more time creating maps than I will scripting, setting up the database, doing cutscenes, writing the story, to everything that actually is required to make this game. I'll probably spend more time creating maps than all that stuff combined. But that's okay, because mapping is actually something that I really enjoy, and it's actually kind of relaxing. I've had a long day today. I worked this morning, and it was not exactly a fun day. I ended up spending a lot of time doing something that was really, really tedious and was not enjoyable. And so I um, was looking forward to this today. I was looking forward to just kind of busting out GIMP and working on some maps and trying to just relax a little bit. Starting up this channel, actually this YouTube channel has actually been kind of a nice distraction for me because it's allowed me to try new things and try things that are actually a little intimidating, a little scary. Recording is not something that I'm super comfortable with, um, but it's allowed me to kind of just experiment with that and try new things, and I'm actually really enjoying it. It's given me a nice creative outlet, um, and hopefully, honestly, the whole reason I started this is um, hopefully this helps somebody. When I started Parallax Mapping, I I kind of had to learn a lot of it on my own. There were a fair bit of tutorials out there, but a lot of them were just showcasing, like, here's how you use this tool. Here's how you import something. Um, here's how you make a specific highly detailed map using 15 different tools with 100 different settings. And it's like, I think the one of the first tutorials that I ever watched with parallax mapping, um, the person was taking the resources and the tile sets and scaling them and resizing them and recoloring them and retexturing them and adding shading and lighting um, and then like skewing them and angling them and then like actually taking the pen tool and kind of drawing in like a certain border to give it a little bit of a 3D effect and doing all these things to like a single rock. And he made it look so easy. It took him like 30 seconds to do. Um, and the result was phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie. It was very impressive when it was done. But I looked at that and thought, I don't think I can do that. That's a lot of work. Um, and I'm not nearly as experienced in graphic design and with these kinds of image editing tools to be able to tackle that and take that on. Now I probably could because I've had a couple years experience of actually working with GIMP, working on these maps. Um, but back then when I was just getting started, man, it was a lot. It was overwhelming, honestly. Um, and it felt like a lot of tutorials were kind of like that, where it's like, this is just a lot. This is overwhelming. I don't think I could do this. Um, and I guess if there's anything I could say, if you're kind of in the same boat, if you're trying to learn parallax mapping and you're maybe a little in over your head and you don't know where to start, and it feels like it's intimidating and all that, is what, just do something simple. It doesn't have to be that complicated. The tutorials out there that are that teach you how to use Photoshop in 1,000 different ways and um, the best way you're going to learn, I think I talked about this in one of my other videos, but the best way you're going to learn how to use certain tools is by using them, not by hearing someone tell you how to use them, but by actually using them and getting experience and practice. Um, so if you start simple and work your way up, you'll be fine. You're going to do just fine. That's where I started. I learned the absolute basics. I learned one or two tricks that somebody used in a parallax mapping tutorial. One of them was the dodge and burn thing that we did on the last video to make the ground as kind of textured as it is. That was one of the tips and tricks that I learned early on, and I threw everything else out that I learned from those other tutorial videos. Not that they were bad tutorials, but it was too much for me. I couldn't keep up. I needed something simple. Um, and so I picked up on one or two things and I applied them to every map I made until eventually I, got good at them and could start learning new tips and tricks. Um, and as I mentioned in the first episode of this little series, um, when I first started learning parallax mapping, I wasn't great, and then after I got about a year's worth of experience, I went back to the first few maps that I made and completely recreated them. And you may end up doing the same thing. If you're doing parallax mapping and you're using this series as a way to learn how to do a certain style of mapping, great, honestly. If this helps you, awesome. Then I couldn't ask for anything more. If it doesn't, I'm I hope you find something that does work for you. You know, um, doesn't have to be the be all end all. You can find another series that works for you. But what was I just saying? Where was I going with that? My brain. Um, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Yeah, if this helps you, great. If it doesn't, I hope you find something that does help you. And that didn't jog the memory as much as I was hoping it would. Give me 1 second here. All right, I'm back. Um, yeah, I guess what I was trying to say was that, what, if you're new to parallax mapping and you're trying new things, and I just realized I think I just did I just duplicate? Yeah, I think I did. I need to stay focused on what I'm doing because if I don't, I will make mistakes. But here we go. Um, anyway, if you are new to parallax mapping and you're trying to learn certain styles and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, just try learning a few things at a time and then just make a few simple maps and understand, this is what I was trying to say, understand that most of what you create in your first sample projects, you're probably going to end up throwing out. Not at first, and there's no reason why you can't keep what you've done. Um, you should absolutely be proud of whatever you've made. If it's your first project or your 50th, it doesn't matter. Be proud of your creations because it's every project you make is another step towards getting better at your craft. But also understand that if you're making parallax maps for your project for the very first time, chances are you're going to end up going back to your first couple maps and thinking, you know what, I can do this better. And you're probably going to end up recreating it. It's not to say you have to, not at all, but that's what I did. And I think most mappers can probably say the same, that, when they went back to the first maps they ever created, whether it was parallax mapping or in the editor, doesn't really matter. I'm willing to bet that most developers looked at those and thought, you know what, I've learned a lot more. I can do this better, and went ahead and recreated them. Yeah, I think that's good there. I'm gonna add one more short tree next to this one here, just like that. There we go. And then I'll have to plant 2 tall trees in a row. Yeah, that one can go there. That's fine. We're not going to have any collision with that one, I don't think. Take a little break from gabbing. Yeah, I mean this is actually turning out pretty nice, and it's honestly, we're already almost done this part of the mapping process. This is going faster than I expected, and faster than I'm used to. Part of that is because I've gained a little bit more experience. It takes me about 5 maps to really settle into a solid mapping style for a new type of map. This is a new type of forest for me, just because I haven't really worked with these tile sets before. I've never really done much with Celiana's Ancient Dungeons to make forests, and so it is a little bit of a new style for me. But not so much so that it's going to take me 8 hours to make a map like it did for my first few. Yeah, first time I made the first Lyre Forest map that I made for Thrall, I think took about 3 hours. I think the first 4 of them took close to that. But I also got distracted. I would take breaks. I wouldn't settle in and spend one session building a map, and I would spend quite a bit of time. I would take a break and then I'd come back to it. And when you do that, when you lose a little bit of momentum. When you get into a groove and you can just kind of go, you'll find that your work speeds up a little bit. I do anyway. You might not find that. That's how. That's what I have found. Although at the same time, the first episode was about 40 minutes. If this is about an hour, and then the next episode is, another half hour to 45 minutes, we'll be getting close to that 3-hour mark. But having said that, I'm also taking time here and there to explain some of what I'm doing, which takes away from the time spent just making the map. So, I mean, yes, I've gotten faster, but I'm also a little bit more focused right now. Hold on a sec. 4 and 5. I'm gonna place another tall tree. Place that not there, not there, there. That's a good spot. But you know what? This is me overthinking again because I stopped talking. Okay, let's place that one there. And we'll drag this and turn that back on and place it. Yeah, there. There we go. Okay, now we're back on track. I don't really know what else to, I guess, talk about. I don't really think there's anything else I could really say about what I'm doing with the map. It's fairly self-explanatory. It's quite literally, like I said at the very start of this video, we're just placing trees, dragging them into a layer group, placing them in a row, rinse and repeat. That's it. So I don't really know how much more I could say about this particular part of the mapping process. I guess I could, talk more about why I'm placing them in certain spots, but I don't really think it matters. Well, it's not that it doesn't matter, it's just I kind of have already explained, for the most part, where I'm placing trees and why I'm placing them there. You want a little bit of space between them. You don't necessarily want them like right hugged up next to each other because that doesn't look great. So you want at least a bit of space, at least one tile space. But you want to stagger the trees so that there's collision between them and you can't just walk through the trees. Which I think I explained that in either my last video or the one before that. I explained that, what, if you've ever actually seen a real forest, like a dense forest, not a park, but like especially, I'm from Canada, and if you've ever been to BC, British Columbia, and you've been out to the mountains and you see some of the dense forests there that have been around for hundreds of years and are, you know, heavily overgrown, you can't walk through those. You can, you could try, you'll break a leg, but you could theoretically try. And that's the other thing, is it's not necessarily about whether or not you can walk between certain shit. Like sure, you could technically, let's use an example. You could technically, if this was a real scenario in real life, you could walk between these trees. There's no reason why you couldn't do that. They're not grouped so close together or, so densely that they are impassable. But keep in mind, this is a dungeon. There are hostile enemies that are going to be in this dungeon, many of which are wildlife, where this is their natural habitat and their home. Maybe you could walk and crawl and scramble between the trunks of these trees to get through to the other side and navigate them that way. But you're certainly not going to be running from a wild animal while doing it. You're not going to be running from something that's trying to hunt you down, because they will know how to navigate those woods far more easily than you can. And if you slow down to scramble through trees, you're going to get caught. But even if you're not being chased by something, if you try to sprint through a forest, you're not going to get very far. Yeah, level ground is not natural. That's what paved is. Okay, let me take a look here. Ooh, I just realized I was not careful enough about how I placed those trees, so I'm going to have to place one that takes up 2 tiles, and this tree arguably only takes up 1. So I'm going to put that back, and now I'm actually going to look for a tree. Actually, the one I just saw there, actually I like that one better. This one here, I believe, takes up 2 tiles for its trunk. Yes, it does. So place that there, and there's our collision detection for that little border. Yeah, that's good. Now right here, I only need 1 tree there, 1 there, and if we could do 2 there, that'd be good. And it looks like short trees might be the best way to go for this, because anything too tall and it's going to block this path. So we'll go a short tree there. That's 1. We'll go short tree here. Yeah, that's 2. Oh, I didn't drag it into the group. There we go. And another short tree. Ooh, I might switch the places of these. We'll see. Yeah, I'm going to switch the places. I'm going to put this one here. And I'm going to place this one there. There we go. That's our little wall, so to speak, that works around that path. Did I place that correctly? No, I didn't. There we go. Now we're good. So that was 3 short trees. Let's go 3 tall trees now. We'll go 1, 2, 1 more, 3. There we go. And now back to the short trees. So yeah, this is a very repetitive process, but the result is turning out really nice. And we're already on the bottom set of clearings, so that's actually quite nice. One thing I like about this particular mapping technique is that you don't typically end up with 2 of the same tree cluster right next to each other. Or if you do, it's okay. Like, it kind of looks like it was supposed to be like that. But there's a ton more variety in the types of trees that are in one small section of the map. Like, if I was just to zoom in right here and look at all the trees in this one little area, like, yeah, there's 1, 2, 3 of those little pine trees, but that's about it for most of the similarities. If you're to kind of, let's take a snapshot of this area right here. Like, you got a couple trees that, you actually got a lot of trees here that have lost all their leaves, and like maybe there's not as many nutrients in the soil or whatever. Maybe there's a little bit of a fire or something in this part of the forest, so it burned away, or like maybe one of them got struck by lightning or something, or whatever it is. Like, for whatever reason, this little grove of trees are dead. But then, outside of that, it starts to get a little bit more overgrown again. You get those little kind of natural generations when you are randomly scattering trees around instead of just taking the same tree and placing it over and over and over again. By having, literally 45 different trees to choose from that we're randomly placing, you'll never end up with a forest that looks the same as anyone else's. Even if it, arguably follows a similar pattern, no 2 forests will look the same using this technique. Similar, sure, but not the same. Kind of curious how well this video is going to do. I know this has, the vast majority of this video has very little to do with actually how to parallax map or how to, you know, be good at game dev. The vast majority of this video is just me. This video could be named Shower Thoughts with Strack. um, basically. But I don't know. I hope it resonates with somebody. I could probably stop the recording and then just, come back when this is all done, but I legitimately want to showcase the entire process. I want to show you that, there's no trickery here. I'm not, you know, setting this aside and then coming back with a pre-made image that looks similar but isn't actually the same. I want to show you that I'm actually doing every single step of making a full map that will actually be implemented in the game that I'm actually making. Um, so that hopefully when this game actually gets released, you can go try it out and look for this map and say, hey, I was there when he made this. I got to see what it was like as he was making it. I know the weird, crazy, off-topic thoughts he was having as he was making this. I don't. That's actually something else I should kind of talk about because that was one of the other things when I was learning parallax mapping that always kind of drove me nuts. Is that I would be shown how to make these gorgeous, really detailed maps that were beautiful and not in any way functional. They looked fantastic. But if you were to actually try to navigate them in a game, in an RPG, like the ones I was making at the time, it wouldn't translate well. A lot of the graphics weren't aligned to a 32 by 32 grid, which is actually kind of important to do. But also, just because it's aligned to a grid doesn't mean it can't look natural. This looks very natural, in my opinion anyway. But the bases of all the trunks are actually aligned to grid spaces, so you can tell you cannot walk here, you can walk here. There's no like weird, I'll give you an example. There's no like weird like trees placed kind of like in a weird spot like that there. It's like, is it all four of those tiles you can't walk on? Like maybe it's like even more askew and it's just like I don't know where the collision is supposed to be on that. Is it on the top, on the bottom? Is it to the left? Like a lot of the tutorials that I saw for parallax mapping kind of placed things in a way that looked fantastic and was in no way functional for a game made with this engine. It was very much just, did I think I did. I think I put two groups in one. Yeah, it was in no way functional. It was just like, you know what, here's this really, really pretty map that doesn't serve any purpose other than looking nice. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually making a map that is going to be used in my game, which means that by default, throughout this whole process, I have to make it functional. If it's not functional, it's not going to be in my game. It wouldn't work. So this whole mapping style is designed to create maps that can work in an RPG where you have grid-based movement and you don't necessarily have you have to have clean collision detection on a 32 by 32 grid. It's that's what this style is designed for. So hopefully that helps somebody. Where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Technically 8 rows left to go. 8 rows out of 52 left. That's actually pretty good. We've made good progress. I'm going to put this one there, and then I'll do another tall tree and put it in between them. like that. Yep. And now, since this is the bottom of the clearing, I'm going to do only short trees. So we'll go and try to find ones that have a little less leaves or are a little bit shorter so that they don't block too much of the clearing. Go one there. You know what? I'm going to move that one down here. Actually, hold on. There. That'll go there. Place one more. Oh, that's a good one. Right there. Yeah, right there. Put it in the right alignment. And then we'll go a tall tree. I'm going to look for a specific one here. I'm looking for one that... Did I already use it? I might have. Oh, no, there it is. That's the one I want. Because the base is very wide, but the top is not, which means I can place this one right here, and it's not going to take up any more of the path or anything like that. Again, I'm overthinking it, but sometimes it's good to overthink things. Okay, so I placed 3 small and 1 tall, and then another small, so that's 3. Nope. Yep. 3. We'll go 4. Yeah, that one should work. Oh, nope. I just kind of saw something there. I need something that's got a base of 2. That one should be fine. 4, 5. So I've placed 5 small trees in a row now. I'm not going to place any on the bottom of this clearing, but I'll place one in between them. 5. 6. And again, nothing there. Now, okay, so 6. I'm going to place 6 tall trees in a row now. 1. I'll place that one there. Oh, there's a good one. 1, 2. There we go. 3. Let's place some of those cool-looking pine trees. 4. Barely visible, but it's there. 5. We're actually going to start spacing our trees out a little bit more for the bottom half of the map here, because we don't need them to be super close together anymore. And this one has no leaves, so it can go right here, and that'll be 6. There we go. Okay, back to small trees. I'm going to have to place a few of these in a row. 1. We'll put that one there. Yeah, that's good. 2. Yeah. 3. Oh, there we go. Good. 4. Yeah, I like that one. 5. So 5 small trees. That means 5 more big trees in a row, but I'm going to need a couple more smalls actually, so 5. Oh, that's a good one. 6. Nice. One more with a double wide base. Perfect. And 7. So now I gotta put 7 tall trees in a row. That's 1. 2. And this is where actually starting to keep track of how many trees I've placed from each layer group doesn't really make sense because I no longer have enough. And I need to kind of make sure that the bottom edges of the clearings are lined with short trees. Otherwise it'll cut into the clearing too much. But I've got 3 short trees left in this layer group, so I'm just going to place tall trees until I have 3 left in that group as well. You don't necessarily have to go through the same whole process that I'm going through, but it's just a way for me to kind of keep track and not reuse trees too close together. I think I can place this here just fine. Yeah, that doesn't cut into the clearing. We're good. And actually, with what we've just done, we have, oh, not yet. Once we fill in this row, we will have a full border for our map. And then we can place trees as widely scattered as we want. They don't need to be clustered super close together anymore. They will still look fairly dense and overgrown, but they don't need to be for our collision detection, which is kind of nice. Ooh, should I maybe save that one? Yes. I'm going to put that one there. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. And we'll place this one here. Done. And, ooh, that's a good one. I like that tree. That'll go perfectly right there. And one more. Does this have a double wide base? No, it does not. So I'm going to move it into the next layer group. So we probably only got 2 more of these groups left to go. What is that, 8 so far? Although I think I doubled up on some of them. So 9. 10 groups all told, probably. That's actually not bad. And actually, we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a bit more rows left to go. So that's it might only be 1 more group. But okay, placing this last tree here, we now have a border for the entire map. When we go to do our collision detection, which we'll do in the next video, it will actually be fully closed off. I know, that's so exciting. Yeah, no, it's I like this. I'm enjoying this. This is fun. This is kind of my way to relax after a long day or a long week. I'm recording this on a kind of a little bit of a chilly September in Saturday in September. That's what I meant to say. There we go. Yeah, words make sense when they are put in the right order. Yeah, it's been a long day, so this is very nice to just kind of relax with this and not have to stress out, not have to think too much, not have to worry about what tomorrow brings or anything. Just enjoy the process. Okay, so now that our board is established, we are going to start scattering these trees a little bit wider. So we're going to put like 3 or 4 tiles between them now. And the end result will still look quite dense, but it's just going to limit the number of trees that we actually need to place. And again, I overthink things, so we probably didn't need to place this many trees in the first place. But we're going to anyway. Here we go. There we go. You'll see why, actually, I decided to place quite so many trees and make it as dense as I did in the next video when we, one, create our overlay, and two, implement it into the game. Creating the overlay is about as tedious as this, but only about as nowhere near as time consuming. Maybe only about 1/4 the amount of time is spent creating the overlay than there is actually creating the map itself, like the forest, placing the trees and all that. I think we're going to get this done all in just 9 layer groups, which I think might be my all-time lowest number of layer groups for this style of a map. Although I, again, kind of didn't quite... What have we done? 505 layers? Yeah, that's about average, actually. That's not uncommon. I'm glad my PC is holding up right now, because oftentimes I experience a fair bit of lag throughout this whole process, just because my CPU is just maxed out with running GIMP, and oftentimes I'll listen to music while I'm doing this. I'll put on, some of my favorite artists and just jam out some tunes while I'm making maps. So with Spotify running and RPG Maker in the background, because I want to check some references and things like that, and then dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of layers in GIMP, and my computer being an absolute potato, I can sometimes max out the CPU, and it slows down to a crawl. I need to get a new computer at some point. But you know what? As long as this one still does what I need it to do, I will continue to use it. What was I saying? Where was I going with that? Right. I'm glad that this video is still holding up and not... I kind of figured with OBS Studio running in the background, this would be way too much for my computer to handle. But it looks like it's keeping up just fine. It doesn't seem to be... What did I do? There we go. There doesn't seem to be too much choppiness when I'm dragging the layer groups around or anything like that. It seems to be fairly smooth, and that's what I like to see. I may lose some fidelity and image quality because my computer may not be able to record at the highest quality with everything that's going on, but we will find out when I upload this, because I can't tell until I actually finish recording. And no matter how poor the quality is, I'm keeping this because this took way too long. I do not want to do this again. Although I will end up doing this again when I make the next map. Okay, so we have filled in every single row, but there's something a little bit weird about this bottom row, which is that it's like there's nothing below it. All the trunks of the trees are planted in the ground right there, and there's no trees down below. So we're going to add 2 more rows, and we're just going to place it 1 tile below the edge of the map. It looks like we are going to need 1 more layer group. But that's okay, because it's below the edge of the map, it actually will be very, very easy, because we won't have to... We can literally include the entire layer as is in the overlay and merge it together, the entire group, without needing to edit each individual layer. Which, spoiler alert, that's what we're going to be doing next episode. We are going to literally be editing every single layer, every single tree that we just placed, to cut out the trunk and the tops of the tree to determine both the base layer and the overlay. And that sounds like a lot of work. It's actually very easy. It takes very little time. Because of how we set this map up, because of how we aligned it to the grid, because we went row by row and went through individual layer groups to kind of bunch things together and keep it organized, because we established early on that the resources I'm using have edited shadows to make it so that they're only 1 tile high, it actually makes the creation of the overlay, extremely easy and very streamlined. A little tedious still, but it won't take nearly as long as what we're doing right now. Okay. Oh, shoot. I didn't duplicate the tree source layer when I made the last one, so I'm going to have to open that up in my other file and bring that in. Here it is. There it is. I'll take that and copy that in. There we go. We're not going to bother duplicating it though, because we're only placing a handful more tree, or a handful of more trees. Literally one more row, which might, actually, you know what? We're not even going to add a layer group to that. We're just going to, yeah, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to use layer 9, because it's not going to be enough trees to warrant its own group. But now we're going to go 2 tiles below the bottom of the map for the last few trees here. Is that right? Yeah. 1, 2. There we go. That's right. Just move that over a little bit. Did I? Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Okay. I don't know. My brain's not firing on all cylinders right now. My brain isn't firing on all cylinders. That's I think I just mixed metaphors there. Okay, here we go. Almost done. Just a few more. This isn't the only thing we're going to do today. We are going to do one more step, but it's a fairly quick one, and it's going to essentially complete this map from a visual standpoint, but not from a functional standpoint. And I'll explain what I mean in a second here. Let's just place the last, I don't know, 4 trees. Let's go 1 there, maybe not even 4, maybe only 3. Yeah, 3 more. So that's 1, that's 2, and place 1 more right here. There, done. And that is every tree. Let's turn off the grid, and let's just look at what we got here. So here's our forest. Not bad, honestly. It looks okay. Let's zoom in and kind of take a close look at it. So, chances are the player's going to spawn here. That'll be the spawn point. Yeah, actually, you know what? This looks pretty good. I like that little plateau and how it extends for like a good third of the map. Like, that's actually a nice little touch. I might actually, in later maps, add more plateaus, like in the corners and stuff, just to give it a little bit more layering, and that'll actually reduce the number of trees I need even further, which is great. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm still learning this kind of style myself. Like this is only the 5th map I've made for this particular dungeon in this game, and it usually takes about 5 or 6 maps for me to figure out, like, okay, what do I want to do as a consistent theme for the rest of this dungeon? And yeah, I think adding more plateaus and making it so that it's there's more, I guess, depth to the map would be a nice touch. So that's probably what we'll do in future maps. I'm not gonna come out with a video for every map that I make. That would be ridiculous. But yeah, I do like the look of this though. This is nice. Okay, so that is how to place all the trees making sure we're placing them with the right spacing, making sure we're placing them in a way that creates a border for our map. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to create another layer group. We're going to call it brush. Bursh. We're going to call it bursh. No, brush. There we go. We're going to put it below the trees. And then we're going to take this brush copy group. We're going to duplicate that. And you know what? Actually, hold on. Instead of brush, we're going to go obstacles first. Obstacles. Here we go. Again, below the trees, we're going to duplicate the obstacles layer first. Open that up. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the trees, where we're just going to draw something out randomly and put it into the group. But now we're going to put it into the clearings, or along the edges of the clearings. And we're going to go, let's say, 2 tiles of obstacles per clearing, with maybe 4 for larger clearings. So we'll go, okay, I got a tree stump. That's nice. Let's put that right. Let's put it right there. Don't necessarily want it like right in the middle of the clearing, because that could be really irritating for players that are to navigate. But like right along the edge of the clearing would be nice. There's 2 there. Let's see, in this nice little tree root. I think we can, no. Yeah, we'll put it, oh, maybe down there. Yeah, that's nice. We'll put that there. And we'll put a little bush up there, nice. There's another clearing there, so we'll go 2 more. Ooh, this is a tile that works really nice close to the water's edge, so we'll place that one there. And some flowers, we'll put that, let's maybe put those there. A nice little bush here as well. Let's put that right over there. And let's see. Ooh, I like this tree stump. It's very nice. Kind of gives it the feel of like it's been left forgotten for years. Some woodsman came in and chopped down a tree, and that was, 60, 70 years ago, and the stump is kind of rotted and is, yeah, I don't know. Just my brain works in mysterious ways. Rock, I'm going to place that there. This rock is actually significant. That sounds weird. This rock is, I'm going to show you something next episode, not this episode, but I'm going to show you something. There is a enemy in this dungeon called a gnome. And gnomes have a unique gimmick, which is that they disguise themselves on the map as rocks that look exactly like this. And if you get too close, they will pop out of the rock and chase you. But I like to have rocks that look like this kind of scattered throughout the dungeon that are totally benign, that are not actually gnomes. Because it just gives the player like that extra... If every single rock that you passed turned out to be a gnome, then you wouldn't be surprised, and you would treat every single rock as though it is hostile. But if only a few of the rocks are actually gnomes, and every map has some that are totally benign, well then, you're going to be a little bit more careful. And it puts the player just a little bit more on edge, which I like to do. Because I'm a little bit mean. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'll put that one up there. So not all of these tiles match very well, but most of them do. And most players will forgive mismatched tile sets if they're at least close. But I will also say make sure that if you are doing parallax mapping or mapping in the editor, doesn't really matter, try to do a consistent mapping style. The more consistent your mapping style, the better your maps are going to be. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, honestly, when it comes to mapping, is not when maps are good or bad. I think that's totally subjective. You can, you know, reach your own decision and opinion about what makes a good map or a bad map. That's a matter of perspective. My biggest pet peeve is when maps are inconsistent in their style. Like you've got a very high resolution HD graphic uh, in one part of the map, but the rest is like a 16-bit pixel art style thing. That drives me crazy. And again, that's just me. Maybe you don't care, in which case, good for you. You probably live a much more peaceful life. But yeah, I can't stand inconsistent mapping styles. It's one of the biggest turnoffs for me when it comes to figuring out what game I want to play is does the mapping style stay consistent throughout the game, or does it just suddenly take hard shifts in tone or in quality? It's like, oh, I can tell the developer put a ton of work into making this map. This one's okay. It's not special. That kind of it irritates me a little bit. If a game's good enough, it's not going to turn me off to playing it altogether, but it does impact my opinion of the game. Okay, um, that's good for all our little obstacles. And now we're going to add brush. Brush. There we go, brush. We're going to place that between the trees and the obstacles. So over the obstacles, but below the trees. We're going to duplicate the brush, and brush is basically anything that you can walk over. Obstacles are obviously things that you can't. And we're going to use the same kind of rule here. Two tiles to a clearing, with more for larger clearings. What I like about the brush, and this is something that you cannot do in the editor, you can place them off center. You can place any of these tiles anywhere you want. It can be like totally at an angle. It can be taking up 4 tiles. It doesn't matter because you're going to be able to walk over it. There's no collision to it, which means that you can literally place these anywhere you want. You can place them as clustered together as you want. You can have like 50 of these in like a 4-tile area if you want. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but you can, and that's what's so cool about parallax mapping. You have total control over where you can place anything. That was actually probably the biggest thing that drew me to this uh, style of mapping, is that I wanted to place things off center from the grid. Like, why do I have to place this in this one exact 32, like aligned perfectly to a 32 by 32 grid? I once read an article about like an RPG Maker review, and I'm pretty sure it was titled, "I hope you like squares," which, yeah, if you're just using the editor, that's pretty accurate. But when you're parallax mapping, you don't have to abide by that. This is a larger clearing, so we're going to go with a couple more tiles. Ooh, mushrooms. I love mushrooms. The tiles, not, yeah. I love mushrooms because you can place them in cool little places, like at the base of a trunk of a stump or a tree. One of my favorite little things to work with, because you can just do all sorts of fun little stuff with these. Like these mushrooms would be growing out of the shade of that rock. But I don't want to place them by that rock, because then that makes it very obvious that that rock is benign and not a gnome. So let's place it at the base of this rock. This is the weird dilemmas I come across when I'm making my own games. It's like, oh, but I want the player to be fooled by something and think, oh, I can't believe I fell for that or whatever, even though that probably makes most people angry. Let's put these mushrooms like hidden there, right in that little nest of trees. So like you can look up and see those. You can't reach them, but like they're little hidden mushrooms. I like that kind of a thing when I'm placing these brush tiles. You can just kind of place them in fun little places that again, it's the little details that most players probably won't even notice, but when you do notice them or when you're looking for them, it it just adds that extra depth and character to the map that you don't typically get in RPG Maker games. Not, I mean, sometimes, sure, but anything made in the editor, it's hard to have little hidden tiny details that are just there for even just you, the developer, to look at and appreciate and be like, oh yeah, I remember putting that there. It's kind of cute. You know, let's put this flower down there. Why not? Let's put these mushrooms. Where are they? Where are they? Come on. Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Let's put these mushrooms by the base of this log. Let's put them actually in between the log and the tree, just like that. I like that. I'll place this dirt patch right there. This little weed right there. I like this little red flower. It kind of grows nicely with the tall grass. These little green weeds kind of do well pretty much anywhere, honestly. And we're almost done here, so let's see, we'll place the little white flowers growing out of the tall grass, and yeah, we'll place those little pebbles on the dirt path, and I want to place one more. Let's find a good one. Let's go with the yellow flowers. And we'll place those right there. Okay, and we are done. This is our map. Visually, this is our map. This is what it will look like in-game, in the editor, when we import it. This will be the end result. The next step is to create an overlay with everything that we have here, basically figuring out what's going to be over the player's head and what is going to be below the player or on the same level as the player. Creating the overlay, importing it into the editor, and then actually implementing it in the game, setting up our collision detection, setting up our events, and testing. You know, making sure that the map actually works the way that we want it to. That is all going to be in the next video, but that is the next step. But this is our forest map. So as far as the actual creation of a parallax map goes, this is it. That is all the work. Again, this is a specific type of map. This is a forest. This is also a specific style of map. But you know, that is how I create parallax maps in for my games, be it Bloodstained Hands or 1 Hour or Thrall, which I'm working on now. And the next episode is actually going to be showing you how to put this in the game and make it a functional map, not just a pretty map. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this. I know it was maybe only like 40% actually talking about mapping techniques and me geeking out about certain stuff, and the rest is me just talking about random stuff. So I hope you got something out of it, whatever it is, whether it's a mapping technique or some sort of takeaway from my ramblings. But yeah, I hope this helped someone in some way. That's really all I can ask for. So with that, I bid you adieu, and I will see you in the next video where we will finish this series off altogether.